So we're delighted to speak to Stephen Moore, who's head of climate action at GSMA. And we're going to talk about telecoms and climate change and lots of other things. Wonderful to connect with you, Stephen, from COP30 here in Belém, where we're broadcasting live every day. And yeah, it's quite a place to be right now, I can tell you. Let's have a bit of a chat about some new information from the telecoms industry, which seems quite exciting. You're working for GSMA, the Industry Association for the telecoms companies. Now, how is GSMA helping the telecoms industry on its path to net zero? And are you finding there's much interest for your members in taking climate action?
Yeah, it's great to be with you today and dial in from London. Sorry, I can't be there actually out in Belém. And what I would love to highlight actually is the work that we've been doing with the industry supporting net zero. And we've been working with our members since 2019 when we actually set an ambition for the industry to be net zero by 2050. We created a climate action task force with our members to help deliver against this ambition. And we've really seen continued interest from our members since 2019, all the way through to the present day, despite some of the turbulence that we've seen over the previous year. Our members remain really committed to climate action, and we've seen a huge take up of voluntary climate targets. So around 80 of our members have committed to science-based targets that are aligned to limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. So the most ambitious aim of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. We've also worked with them on the pathway from 2020 to 2030 to be in line with that 1.5 degrees. And recently we have focused on what the transition plan is for those members. So how could they put into practice and put into reality the reductions that they'll need to achieve in order to be in line with 1.5 degrees.
Hmm. Very good indeed. Sounds quite exciting. So, tell us, explain what is a credible transition plan? What does that mean, and why is it important for companies to develop one?
Well, a credible transition plan really is a roadmap for how companies are going to address the transition to net zero. And this covers both the mitigation side, so how they're going to be reducing their carbon emissions, but also the adaptation side, because we know that some heating is already baked in. We're already starting to see it, and some of the extreme weather events as well. And because our members are infrastructure companies, so we have to maintain a level of service that's very much expected and needed in countries around the world. So it's both how they can reduce emissions to net zero, but then also how they can make their infrastructure resilient at the same time. And credible transition plans covers both of these elements, but also looks at other aspects that are important to delivery of these plans. So, for example, the governance that's required within an organization, how it ties in with the finances of an organization as well. And all of this is aligned to international framework. An international framework that developed actually in the UK and that we have used as the basis for the framework that we are using for our industry, for telecommunications.
Hmm.
Um, so I think putting all of that together means that you're able to communicate something that is credible to your stakeholders.
Good. And let's just look at this in a sense of who really benefits from this. I mean, are company transition plans mainly useful for companies themselves, or are they relevant for anyone else? I mean, governments, suppliers, investors, anyone else listening today?
Yeah, I think they're first of all very important for the company themselves. Obviously, it's not so much for them to report on, but it's more really to use them as a tool to drive change across the organization itself. So, as I say, because you're looking at different parts of the organization, it's really looking at engaging these different parts of the company so that they're all aligned to delivering against net zero, against the transition. But it's important for other stakeholders as well. So we know, especially for our industry, that a majority of the emissions for our network operators actually sits in their supply chain. So
Mm.
having a credible transition plan and publishing that is a very significant signal to your suppliers and your supply chain that there are some things that you'll need from them. So you'll need them, for example, to cut their emissions in order for operators to reach their own targets.
Mm.
What we also see is it provides assurance to investors. Investors are now increasingly savvy to climate risks and the potential impact of that on current and future balance sheets. So, having a credible transition plan is communicating to your investors that you are also acknowledging these risks, but more importantly, you're taking steps to address them. We also see it being important for other stakeholders like governments. Governments have their own carbon reduction plans that they're increasingly announcing. There's a big focus on roadmaps for this COP in Belém. And these transition plans are the roadmaps for companies. So when we look at what is the likely scenarios for future carbon reductions, we can look together to bring together both where governments are going in terms of their NDCs, their carbon targets, but also trying to implement and integrate what companies are doing as well. So we've kind of got a blended view of where economies are heading.
Mm.
And the final thing I think it's worth pointing out is that these transition plans are really important for employees and customers as well, because we know, about 90% of the population globally wants there to be action on climate change. So it's a fantastic way to signal that action is actually taking place.
Okay, let's just wrap up with one last question. What would you like to see from COP30 this year? I don't know, personally or from a business point of view? And are you optimistic or pessimistic about what these COP processes can actually achieve?
Yeah, I think there's always a lot of noise around this time of year, and a lot of concern that COP doesn't deliver because we haven't seen significant reductions, and the process is obviously now in its 30th year. But it's a multilateral process that obviously is bringing together every single country around the world to agree a huge transition. So I think there's, looking at what's been achieved since Paris over the last 10 years, it really does feel like we've turned a corner. And now there is real impetus and momentum around the net zero transition. We're seeing, the cost of renewables has come down hugely over that period. We're seeing a massive switch towards things like electric vehicles, the technology around batteries. So it seems that the economic argument is increasingly being won around the benefits to the economy of the net zero transition. I'd love to see this being highlighted through the solutions that will be presented at COP. This is being called the implementation COP, so really showcasing the fantastic solutions and progress that we're already seeing around the world, which would be great. It also would be good to address the green backlash that we've seen a bit over the last year, which I think has led some people to think that perhaps things are going backwards rather than forwards, which is definitely not the case. And we're also seeing a lot of climate misinformation, particularly coming from the fossil fuel lobby, who are being increasingly under threat from the progress that we're seeing around net zero. So I think there's actually a session on at COP today, particularly looking at climate misinformation. So perhaps having some more coordinated messaging on climate issues would really help this. But ultimately showcasing that action is happening, progress is being made, and that there's actually a much more positive and optimistic outlook for climate action than perhaps we read sometimes in the daily news.
Thanks very much. We're going to know, obviously, in some time, far into next week, whether we do get some progress here. But there's a lot of positivity, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. Thanks very much for being on We Don't Have Time. Best of luck with your work, and take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.